Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments what city or country you're watching from. Tonight's story begins with scissors raised over a maid's hair and one hidden mark that turns a billionaire's wedding into a family investigation. Cut off her braid. Sabine Laurent's command silenced the wedding rehearsal. More than 100 guests stood inside the glass conservatory of the Vale estate, surrounded by white orchids, gold chairs, and cameras waiting to capture the marriage of billionaire Tristan Vale to one of New York's most admired socialites. At the center of the aisle, 28-year-old black maid Amaya Brooks stood with a tray pressed against her chest. Her long braid fell almost to her waist. Sabine pointed toward the house stylist, who held silver scissors. "She let it touch my veil," Sabine announced. "If she cannot keep herself presentable around couture, remove the problem." Amaya stared at her. "My hair never touched your veil." Sabine smiled without warmth. "Are you calling the bride a liar?" A few guests lowered their eyes. Others lifted their phones. The stylist did not move. Sabine's voice sharpened. "I gave you an instruction." Amaya set the tray down. "You can dismiss me. You cannot cut my hair." Sabine stepped closer and seized the braid herself. "This house will belong to me tomorrow." "No," Amaya said. "You will marry the man who owns it." "That is not the same thing." A murmur moved through the conservatory. Sabine's face changed. She snatched the scissors from the stylist and raised them. A man's voice came from behind the floral arch. "Put them down." Tristan Vale entered through the side doors in a black rehearsal suit. He had returned from a trustees' meeting earlier than Sabine expected. She softened her expression instantly. "Tristan, this maid insulted me in front of everyone. I heard what happened." Sabine released Amaya's braid, but several pins came loose. The heavy braid shifted over Amaya's shoulder, exposing the skin behind her left ear. Tristan stopped walking. A burgundy birthmark curved along Amaya's neck, 3 small points forming a broken crown. The color drained from his face. "Turn around," he said quietly. Amaya frowned. "Sir, please." She turned slightly. Tristan stared at the mark as if the room had disappeared. His younger sister, Celia, had vanished from a private maternity clinic 28 years earlier. She was 6 weeks old. There had been no ransom demand, confirmed sighting, or body. But every police report included one identifying detail: a broken crown birthmark behind the left ear. Sabine lowered the scissors. For the first time, fear appeared in her eyes. Tristan looked at Amaya. "How old are you?" 28. "When is your birthday?" "November 9th. His breathing changed. Celia Vale had been born on November 9th. 3 days earlier, Amaya had arrived at the Vale estate before sunrise. The mansion stood above the Hudson River, all pale stone, winter gardens, and enormous windows. She had worked there for 11 months, mostly in the private family wing. The job paid enough to support her foster mother, Ruth Brooks, who had suffered a stroke the previous year. Amaya had no secret fortune or powerful relatives. She had a small apartment, a nursing school application she kept delaying, and the braid Ruth had taught her never to cut. "Your mother gave you that hair," Ruth always said. "Keep it until you know where you came from." Amaya had never understood. Ruth was not her biological mother. She had adopted Amaya as an infant through a church placement program. The records were incomplete, and the agency had closed decades ago. That morning, Amaya was polishing silver in the breakfast room when Tristan entered carrying 2 folders. At 39, he was known for rebuilding Vale Aerospace into a global engineering empire. Inside the mansion, he was quieter than magazines suggested. "Mrs. Brooks is recovering," he asked. Slowly. "If you need another afternoon off. I already owe the staff 3 schedule changes." "You don't owe anyone for caring for your mother." Amaya smiled faintly. "You say that because nobody charges billionaires guilt by the hour." He almost laughed. Then Sabine entered wearing a white silk suit. Her gaze moved from Tristan to Amaya, then to the braid over Amaya's shoulder. "Tomorrow, all female staff will wear their hair above the collar," she said. Amaya looked up. "Mine is secured." "It is too noticeable." Tristan closed one folder. Her hair is not part of the wedding plan. Sabine smiled at him. Everything visible in photographs is part of the wedding plan. I won't ask staff to alter themselves for photographs. Of course. After Tristan left, Sabine remained. Her eyes settled on the strip of birthmark visible beneath Amaya's braid. What is that? Amaya covered it. A birthmark. Sabine's fingers tightened around her tablet. What shape? Why does that matter? Sabine came closer. Because I have seen it before. Where? She did not answer. Instead, she opened Amaya's personnel file and read the date of birth. November 9th. Her face went pale. Then she smiled again. Tomorrow, you will work close to the altar. That night, Sabine entered Tristan's locked family archive using a key she was not supposed to possess. She removed an old missing child file from the lowest drawer. Inside was a hospital photograph of baby Celia Vale. On the back, someone had written, "If she is ever found, do not let Tristan learn who took her." The handwriting belonged to Sabine's mother. Sabine closed the archive drawer the moment footsteps sounded outside. She slipped the missing child file beneath her coat and turned off the desk lamp. The family archive returned to darkness just as the door handle moved. Mrs. Harlan, the elderly estate archivist, stepped inside carrying a box of wedding programs. "Miss Lauron?" Sabine forced a smile. "I was looking for photographs of Tristan's parents for tomorrow's tribute." Mrs. Harlan's eyes dropped to the key in Sabine's hand. "That room is restricted. Tristan gave me access. He did not tell me. He does not report every decision to the staff." The archivist remained still. For 35 years, Mrs. Harlan had protected the Vale family's private records. She knew every locked cabinet, every sealed file, and every story wealthy people had paid to keep outside newspapers. Her gaze shifted toward Sabine's coat. "What did you take?" Sabine stepped closer. "Be careful." Mrs. Harlan's expression did not change. That sounded like a threat. It was advice. Sabine moved past her and left the archive. She did not notice the small security camera above the door. The next morning, Amaya arrived at the conservatory before 7. The rehearsal dinner had been replaced with a private wedding breakfast for close relatives, donors, and members of the Vale Company board. Florists worked beneath the glass ceiling while photographers tested camera angles along the aisle. Amaya wore her braid pinned tightly against the back of her head. She had covered the birthmark with makeup. Sabine noticed immediately. "You were told to wear your hair above the collar." "It is above the collar." "Remove the braid entirely." Amaya looked at her. "You mean cut it?" Sabine smiled. "I mean solve the problem permanently." "I won't." Sabine stepped closer. "You are very confident for someone whose foster mother's medical bills are being reviewed by the Vale Employee Fund." Amaya's stomach tightened. "What does Ruth have to do with my hair?" "Nothing, if you cooperate." The threat was clear. Sabine had looked into her private records. Before Amaya could respond, Tristan entered the conservatory with his uncle, Dr. Malcolm Vale. Malcolm was 70, silver-haired, and served as chairman of the family foundation. He had also been the physician who signed Celia Vale's infant medical records 28 years earlier. Sabine's expression warmed instantly. "Tristan, you're early. So is everyone else." His gaze settled on Amaya. The birthmark was hidden, but he had spent the previous night thinking about it. "How long have you known you were adopted?" he asked. Amaya glanced toward the nearby staff. "Since I was old enough to understand the word." "Do you know where you were born?" "No." "Which agency handled the placement?" "A church office in Queens. It closed years ago." Malcolm's hand tightened around his cane. Sabine noticed. Tristan did too. "Uncle?" Malcolm recovered quickly. "I'm tired. That is all." Amaya studied him. The old doctor would not meet her eyes. Tristan lowered his voice. "I would like to speak with you privately after breakfast." Sabine stepped between them. "Today is our wedding rehearsal. Surely this can wait." "No." The answer came too quickly for her comfort. Tristan looked toward Amaya again. "If there is any chance you are connected to Celia, I need to know. A nearby glass slipped from a waiter's tray and shattered. Malcolm had struck it with his cane. The entire conservatory turned. I said I'm tired, he muttered. He left without waiting for assistance. Amaya watched him disappear through the side doors. He knows something, she said. Sabine's voice became sharp. You know nothing about this family. Tristan turned toward her. Why are you so angry? I'm protecting you from false hope. By threatening her hair. Sabine's face changed. Amaya looked at Tristan. She told me to cut it. She also mentioned my foster mother's medical bills. Tristan's expression hardened. Did you threaten Ruth's care? Sabine gave a disbelieving laugh. I reminded Amaya that appearances matter today. You mentioned medical bills while discussing her appearance. That is not what happened. Amaya touched the covered birthmark. She saw this yesterday. After that, she started asking about my date of birth. Sabine looked at her with open hatred. Tristan noticed. Sabine, what did you see? Nothing. Then why did you enter the family archive last night? The color drained from her face. Mrs. Harlan entered the conservatory carrying a tablet. She stopped beside Tristan. The archive camera recorded Miss Laurent removing Celia's file at 11:42. A murmur spread among the nearby board members. Sabine turned on the archivist. You had no right to show him private footage. It is his family archive. Tristan held out his hand. Give me the file. I don't have it. Then where is it? Sabine's silence lasted too long. Tristan looked toward security. Search her suite. She stepped forward. You cannot humiliate me in my own wedding venue. You searched a missing child file hours after seeing Amaya's birthmark. I am asking why. Sabine's voice dropped. Because the mark proves nothing. No one said it did. Another mistake. Amaya looked at her. You already knew the mark was in the file. Sabine stared back, trapped by her own words. At that moment, Malcolm returned carrying a sealed medical envelope. His face looked older than it had 10 minutes earlier. Stop the search, he said. Tristan turned. Why? Malcolm looked at Amaya's covered neck. Then he placed the envelope on the table. Because I know who she is. The conservatory fell silent. Amaya stopped breathing. Malcolm's hands shook as he broke the seal. Inside was an infant blood card, an altered birth certificate, and a photograph of Ruth Brooks leaving a private maternity clinic with a baby wrapped in a Vale family blanket. Tristan stared at the image. Amaya whispered, why was Ruth there? Malcolm closed his eyes. Because she did not adopt you through a church. He looked directly at her. She was paid to take you away. Amaya stared at the photograph until the faces blurred. Ruth Brooks looked 20 years younger, standing outside the private clinic with a newborn wrapped tightly against her chest. The blanket carried the Vale family crest. The baby's face was barely visible. But behind one tiny ear was the broken crown birthmark. Amaya's knees weakened. She was paid to take me, she whispered. Malcolm lowered his eyes. Yes. Tristan gripped the edge of the table. By whom? Malcolm did not answer immediately. Sabine moved toward the sealed medical envelope. This is clearly not the place for such a conversation. Tristan blocked her hand. You have spent 2 days trying to prevent this conversation. You are staying. Guests and staff remained frozen around the conservatory. The wedding flowers, cameras, and champagne suddenly felt grotesque beside the truth unfolding at the breakfast table. Malcolm removed his glasses. Celia was born with a serious heart condition, he said. Your parents were told she might not survive infancy. Tristan's face tightened. I know that. What you were never told was that the diagnosis was wrong. Amaya looked at him. What happened? Malcolm continued carefully. A second specialist examined her and confirmed the defect was minor. Treatable. Celia could have lived a normal life. Then why was she taken? Tristan demanded. Because your father had already made arrangements based on her expected death. Silence spread through the room. What arrangements? Amaya asked. Malcolm looked toward the company board members nearby. Your grandfathers will divided control of Vale Aerospace equally between Tristan and Celia. If Celia died before adulthood, her shares transferred to Tristan's guardian. Tristan understood first. My father. Malcolm nodded. He was drowning in debt after several failed investments. If Celia lived, he lost access to half the family voting shares. Amaya's hand moved protectively toward her birthmark. So he made everyone believe she died. He arranged a false emergency transfer from the maternity clinic. The ambulance records were altered. A blank death certificate was prepared. Tristan's voice dropped. And you signed it? Malcolm closed his eyes. Yes. The confession seemed to age him in seconds. I told myself I was protecting the company, the employees, and the family name. Your father promised Celia would be placed with a safe family and never harmed. Amaya looked at the photograph again. Ruth. She was a clinic aide, Malcolm said. She had recently lost a child of her own. Your father offered her enough money to leave New York and raise you under a different name. She never spent it. Malcolm frowned. What? We lived in a small apartment above a laundromat. Ruth worked 2 jobs. If she received money, she didn't keep it. Mrs. Harlan stepped forward. Because Ruth returned it. Everyone turned toward her. The archivist placed an old bank receipt beside the photograph. She came to the estate 6 months after taking Celia. She returned every dollar and demanded that Charles Vale confess. Tristan looked at Malcolm. What did my father do? He threatened to accuse Ruth of kidnapping, Malcolm admitted. She disappeared again before he could reach her. Amaya's voice trembled. She spent 28 years protecting me from this family. No, Sabine said suddenly. She spent 28 years lying to you. Amaya turned. Sabine stood rigid beside the table, her wedding plans collapsing around her. You knew, Amaya said. Sabine's silence answered. Tristan faced his fiancée. How? She looked toward Malcolm. My mother worked for your father's attorney. Amaya remembered the handwriting inside the missing child file. If she is ever found, do not let Tristan learn who took her. Your mother wrote the warning, she said. Sabine's expression hardened. She helped create Celia's replacement records. When I saw your birthmark, I knew exactly what it meant. That is why you wanted my braid cut, Amaya said. You wanted the mark exposed publicly. Sabine gave a bitter laugh. No. I wanted it removed from sight. Tristan stared at her. You thought cutting her hair would hide it. I thought the stylist could cover the mark afterward and claim it was makeup, a scar, anything. I only needed her removed before you started asking questions. You threatened Ruth's medical care. I was protecting our wedding. You were protecting your family's connection to a kidnapping. Sabine's face twisted. You don't understand what happens if she is legally recognized as Celia Vale. She owns half of everything you control. The conservatory erupted in whispers. Amaya looked at Tristan. I don't want your company. This is not about what you want, Sabine snapped. It is about what your existence does. Tristan stepped between them. Her existence does nothing. Your fear exposed you. Malcolm reached into the medical envelope again. There is one more document. He unfolded a DNA report dated only 3 weeks earlier. Amaya stared at the date. You tested me. Sabine went pale. Malcolm looked at her. I didn't. Tristan read the laboratory authorization. The request had been made using hair collected from Amaya's staff locker. The person who ordered the test was Sabine Laurent. At the bottom, the result was unmistakable. Probability of sibling relationship, 99.8%. Tristan looked at Amaya, his eyes filling with disbelief. Then security entered carrying a small evidence bag. Inside was Amaya's severed braid. Mrs. Harlan gasped. Amaya touched the back of her head. Her braid was still there. The braid in the bag belonged to someone else. Attached to it was a hospital tag bearing one name. Celia Vale. Sabine whispered, That's impossible. A security officer looked at Tristan. We found it inside Miss Laurent's mother's locked apartment. Then he added the detail that silenced everyone. The hair was cut yesterday. Tristan ordered every door to the conservatory closed. The wedding is suspended, he said. No guest leaves until security determines what has been planted inside this house. Sabine stared at the severed braid inside the evidence bag. That cannot belong to Celia. Amaya's voice was cold. You seemed certain I was Celia 5 minutes ago. I said the birthmark proved nothing. But you secretly tested my DNA. Tristan turned to the security officer. Where exactly did you find the braid? In a refrigerated evidence case inside Mrs. Laurent's apartment. There were also forged clinic records, passport photographs, and documents transferring Vale shares to someone identified as Celia. Sabine's eyes closed briefly. Tristan noticed. You knew about those documents. No. You are reacting before he finishes speaking. The officer opened another evidence bag. Inside was a passport bearing the name Celia Helena Vale. The photograph did not show Amaya. It showed a different black woman of the same age, with similar features and a long braid arranged over one shoulder. Amaya stepped closer. Who is she? Sabine said nothing. Mrs. Harlan examined the photograph. I have seen her. Everyone turned toward the archivist. She visited the estate 6 months ago, Mrs. Harlan said. Miss Laurent introduced her as a wedding consultant named Mara. Tristan looked at Sabine. You brought someone into my home who was preparing to claim my missing sister's identity. You are making assumptions. Malcolm took the passport. The clinic seal is genuine. How? Tristan asked. Malcolm's face tightened. Because Sabine's mother kept the original seal after the maternity clinic closed. Amaya understood. The DNA test had not been ordered only to confirm her identity. Sabine needed to know whether the real Celia had returned before another woman was publicly presented in her place. You planned to replace me, Amaya said. Sabine's silence was answer enough. Tristan's voice became dangerously calm. Explain the purpose of the false Celia. Sabine finally looked at him. After our marriage, the family intended to reopen the missing person case. Mara would appear with medical records, photographs, and a believable story. And claim half of Vale Aerospace. She would place her voting rights in a family trust. Controlled by whom? Sabine did not answer. Controlled by you, Tristan said. The plan became horrifyingly clear. Sabine would marry Tristan and gain access to his side of the company. Her family would then produce a false Celia and control the other half through forged documents. Amaya's unexpected arrival had threatened both parts of the scheme. The braid was cut yesterday because Mara no longer needed it, Sabine said suddenly. Everyone stared at her. Tristan stepped forward. You just admitted knowing her. Sabine realized her mistake too late. Amaya pointed to the evidence bag. Why remove her braid? Because she was leaving. Or because your mother was changing her appearance after discovering me. The security officer received a message through his earpiece. His expression hardened. We found blood inside Mrs. Laurent's apartment. Tristan looked at him. Whose? The rapid test does not match Sabine or the braid. There are signs someone was dragged through the kitchen and taken out through the service elevator. Amaya's phone began ringing. The name on the screen was Ruth Brooks. Relief struck her first. Then fear. Ruth never called without assistance since her stroke. Amaya answered. Mom. No one replied. A video appeared. Ruth sat in a wheelchair inside a windowless room. Her hands were restrained beneath a blanket, and a bruise darkened one side of her face. Beside her stood the woman from the forged passport. Mara. Her braid had been cut unevenly near her shoulders. She looked terrified. Sabine's mother stepped into the frame. Celeste Laurent was elegant, silver-haired, and completely calm. Amaya, she said, your foster mother has spent 28 years hiding evidence that belongs to me. Tristan moved toward the phone, but Celeste raised a handgun beside Ruth's head. Do not involve the police. Amaya's breathing stopped. Celeste continued. Bring Malcolm's envelope and the original DNA report to the abandoned maternity clinic at midnight. What do you want with me? I want you to sign away Celia Vale's inheritance. And if I refuse? Celeste placed the weapon against Ruth's temple. Then Mara will become Celia before sunrise, and the only mother you have ever known will not live long enough to expose us. The video ended. Amaya lowered the phone. Tristan reached for her hand. You are not going alone. Before Amaya could answer, Malcolm quietly removed another paper from the medical envelope. There is something Celeste does not know, he said. He unfolded the document. It was Celia Vale's original birth record. Under the line marked number of children delivered, someone had written 2.